Hello, and welcome back to the final episode of the Raven Nole Show for 2024. I am your host, Raven C. Nole, and I am so thankful that you joined me today. Whether you're a longtime listener or joining me for the very first time, thank you for tuning in. It means the world to me that you have chosen to spend your time with me today. And trust me, I do not take that lightly. Before we dive into today's topic, make sure to hit that subscribe button for me so you never miss an episode. And if you are listening on a podcast streaming platform, please leave me a review or comment below this video if you're watching me on YouTube. It helps us to grow and reach more amazing listeners like you. Now, today's episode is extra special. We are closing out 2024 with this episode where I'm going to be sharing 5 lessons that have not only shaped me this year, but have the power to inspire and transform your life too. Now, these lessons are probably my top takeaways from this year because this year has been a wild ride, okay? It has been a wild ride. I've heard that 2024 has been a great year for some and that 2024 hasn't been a great year for others. For me, it has been more in that middle spot, that middle marker. I had some hard moments, but I've also had some really good moments. But I will say I am in great expectation of what 2025 will bring. Now, why I say that it's wild is because beyond our own personal lives, there has just been a lot going on in the world. I mean, I have seen so much in news and media, just so much stuff that has been going on in 2024. And it has really taken us all on a wild ride. All of us have been on this roller coaster of 2024. But before we jump into a new year, it is always good to reflect, to pause, and just to think about the lessons that you've learned from that current year. And so that's what today's episode is all about. And we're going to dive into it. So I want to start off with lesson number 1. The first lesson I've learned this year is a good one and one that you really need to adopt and really take in for yourself. And that lesson is it's okay to let go of things that no longer serve you without explanation. Way too often, I feel that we have this feeling that we need to explain ourselves. You know, number one, no one ever told us or asked us to explain ourselves, but it's also 2 other things that's associated with that. Number 1 is people pleasing, and then number 2 is the need to be understood, okay? And so I've learned just how freeing it is to release things that drain you, release things that distract you, just release things that kind of weigh you down, even if you have to stand alone. And I do believe that this is a weak spot for many multifaceted, multi-gifted women, because oftentimes you already feel like an outcast, right? You know, you already feel misunderstood. And it's like, okay, I already feel this way. And so you're fighting to be understood. And here's the thing. Sometimes there's something in you where when God tells you to do this or God tells you to do that, or when you feel that something is no longer serving you, something is, not healthy for you, there's this thing within you that makes you feel that you have to explain that to people. You have to give full description. You have to give full detail as to why you're making the decision that you're making, or why you're cutting ties with a certain thing, or why you're moving away from a certain thing, or why you're choosing to go in another direction. You feel that you have to give a full disclaimer for the decisions that you're making for yourself. And so you find yourself trying to get people to understand your decisions because you don't want to be judged unfairly. That's just the truth. Listen, let's just have a conversation today about it. And so maybe you relate to that. Maybe you feel like throughout this year, you've had to make some really hard decisions. And you're like, every time I made a decision or I tried to advocate for myself, or I did something that I felt like God was telling me to do, I felt this thing within me that I just really wanted people to understand why I was doing it. Or I just found myself trying to explain to people to try to get them to get why I was making the decisions that I was making, and, why I was going in the direction that I was going in. And so you start to feel this type of way about your decisions, right? And sometimes it boils down to this desire again to please people. And when you do that, your desire to please people starts to take the front seat. And next thing you know, what is best for you is taking the back seat. Okay. But I want you to know that you don't owe anyone an explanation for doing what's best for you. Now, this is different if you find a consistent pattern in your life where you're very self-centered and very self-absorbed. That's different. If you're always like, it's me, 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 I don't care what nobody got to say, what nobody got, that's a different type of perspective, than you feeling as if you have to explain yourself when you are moving in the direction that God has told you to move in and you have pure heart and pure intentions in what you're doing. And so I want you to go into 2025 resolved about your decisions. And I want you to stop trying to get people to understand your why. I guarantee you that your year would be so much more freeing. It would be so much less stressful if you stop trying to get people to understand why you're doing what you're doing or why you're following God or whatever that is. You have to resolve your why for yourself and stop trying to get people to confirm it for you. Because sometimes I think that's what we're doing. We're explaining it to people. We're trying to give an explanation for it because ultimately sometimes we don't even trust what we're doing. And so it's like, okay, if I can get somebody else on board with this and they can understand or they can come into agreement with it, I'll feel better. But listen, obedience, that's between you and God. Obedience is between you and God, and no one is going to understand it. They're not going to understand why God told you to do certain things. They're not going to always understand why certain things no longer serve you. And so instead of you trying to get people to understand, once again, you want to get resolved about your why so that you feel confident in your decisions and confident in the direction that you're going in your life. Now, lesson number 2. This is a good one as well, and I think you're going to like this one. I would say another takeaway from 2024, and it kind of ties into that last lesson, is just because people don't agree or understand doesn't mean you stop doing what God told you to do. Now, that lesson ties into the last lesson, but it does stand alone on its own as well, okay? Because listen, this year, I've seen so much stuff on social media. Oh my goodness. I've seen all kind of stuff. You can go on any platform, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Threads, whatever, TikTok, and you're going to be bombarded with so much information, which is one of the struggles for me having an online business and being in this media space, because you have to scroll on social media at times. You have to, see what people are posting and, all this type of stuff. And so when you are scrolling on social media and you see someone posting or talking about something, it can be the exact opposite of what God just told you to do. Anybody been there where you're scrolling on social media and God has already given you a plan. He's been giving you details. He's been clarifying some things for you. And then you jump on YouTube or you jump on TikTok and you come across something that is the exact opposite of what God said for you to do. You be like, the devil is a liar. And so when you are in this social media space or you are online, which none of us can avoid, where it's a space that's oversaturated at times with people's opinions and their thought processes and all those different things, right? You have to be solidified enough in your relationship with the Lord and solidified enough in your person and emotionally intelligent, if I may add, to know that this is what God told me to do, even if people don't agree. And so we have to understand that all of us are in different seasons of our lives. This person may be in one season. This person may be in another season. You may be in this season, over here, there in this season. None of us are in the exact same seasons in our lives. And so you have to be solidified in knowing what God has told you to do in this season. Because if not, it can cause you to question, did I hear God correctly? Did I hear God clearly? Was that me or was that God? Was that something else? And so, all of a sudden, you find yourself questioning what God told you to do when just 5 seconds ago you were confident. You felt confident what God has said. But then you get on social media and you see someone talking confidently about the exact opposite of what God said, and that can bring about a lot of confusion. But nowhere in my Bible, I don't know about your Bible, but nowhere in my Bible does it say that I need you or some stranger on the internet or someone who I don't know to agree with what God told me to do. And so I want you to take on and adopt the same mindset. Okay. Again, like I just said, obedience is between you and God. And so you can't let what you see on social media or on any platform to move you out of alignment with what God said to you. You have to be solidified in that thing. You got to make sure that you are grounded in that thing, and you got to know that you know that you know what God has said, because that is one of the enemy's tactics, is to cause confusion in your life and to knock you off of your stance so that you're not confident in your ability to hear God, and you're not confident in what God has said. And so you got to be very, very careful with that. So going into 2024, we don't want that. We want to make sure we're solidified in what God has said. Now, lesson number 3 is another good one. I'm probably going to say that all 5 of these lessons are good because I learned them from the Lord. I learned them from walking with God. So lesson number 3 is don't be afraid to pray big prayers. Don't be afraid to pray big prayers, and don't be afraid to pray bold prayers. Because listen, you are a child of God, okay? Now, believe it or not, I'm going to go down a little bit of a bunny trail right now and give you a little bit of lesson. Give you a little lesson. Believe it or not, your wounds shape how you perceive God, okay? And when I say wounds, I mean WOUNDS. Your wounds shape how you perceive God. Life experiences, whether they are pre-salvation or post-salvation, this can create false images in your mind of God, okay? And these false images will cause you to place unnecessary limitations on your heart and also on your faith, what you believe God can do and what you believe God is capable of. And so God really challenged me with this year. And so I want to challenge you also with this. Have you ever found it difficult to ask God for things in prayer? And so maybe you catch yourself saying, I'm not asking for much, God, Lord, I'm just asking for this, if I could just get this, or if I could just do that. We tiptoe around asking God for certain things in prayer instead of praying bold, courageous, big prayers as if we are daughters of the Most High King. And so this kind of language, when you kind of tiptoe around what God is saying or what you feel you should be praying or things that you really do desire, when you start to tiptoe around that stuff, that suggests that you don't fully believe you serve a God who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Okay, that's something in your heart that you have to work through. And so oftentimes, however, this belief starts and ties back to childhood, which a lot of these false beliefs that we come into do. A lot of this stuff starts in childhood. Now, specifically, when we are having a hard time asking God for things in prayer, this will tie back to a wound pertaining to our fathers. Okay, so when fathers fail to provide, children become wounded. Fathers should be providing for their children, and when they don't, those children become wounded. And that's going to lead to those children expecting little provision and even being hesitant to ask for anything. So these wounded children become adults. Am I talking to you? Who James 4:2 describes as jealous and envious of what others have. And, just always doing that comparison game. Yet the scripture also clarifies you don't have because you don't ask. And so we have to realize that we serve a good father and that we have a right to ask a good father for provision. But when our fathers did not provide in that context for us, growing up, you start to look at God, who is Father, in the same lens, whether you are meaning to do so or you're not. And so you go to a place of prayer and you tiptoe, or you go to a place of prayer and you feel undeserving. And so you don't ask for big things. You don't even think to ask for big things, or you feel convicted for asking for big things, right? And so this ties back to, again, not having your natural father as a provider, or a natural father didn't give much provision to you. But I want to encourage you to ask again. If you have a pure heart and you have pure motives, the Lord desires to provide for his children. And so whatever that thing is or was in 2024 that you were afraid to ask for, whatever it was that you tiptoed around when it came to your prayer time, and you were just kind of like, God, all I'm asking is for a little bit. I'm not asking for much. Just give me a little bit, or I'm just, if I can type of mentality, or your approach in prayer. I want you to process through that with the Lord and say, you know what, God, here's what I really want to ask for. And don't be afraid to ask for the big thing in 2025. Make the end of 2024 a place of prayer, and start building yourself up in prayer, and get that courage and that boldness to ask for whatever it is that you desire in 2025. Because listen, I know I am. Okay, I'm a child of God. I am a daughter of the Most High King who has laid their lives down to serve a good God. I am deserving of good things. Amen. Amen. All right. So lesson four. You can be this and that. Okay. Stop boxing yourself in. Now, one of the things I struggled with was trying to fit into the box of one thing. That has been one of the struggles for me for a long time, is trying to just fit into this box of one thing. Ultimately, that's because I see a lot of people, or I've seen a lot of people that, I would look up to, or those who would be considered coaches or different things of that nature throughout my journey, kind of focus on that one thing. And so for me, over the years, it started to feel as if I was suppressing parts of myself. It started to feel like I was confining parts of myself. It felt like I was living a half version of myself, and I wasn't being truly 100% me. And so one day I realized, Raven, you're multi-gifted. Literally, just an aha moment. You are multi-gifted. And God had to really help me to understand that he had gifted me with a gift, and that I had a multi-gifted nature, and that it was okay to be all that I am. And so I want to say that to you as well. Maybe you have felt suppressed trying to fit into the box or the mold of this one thing. And God is like, listen, you can be all the things that you are. Be all that you are. And God really did this past year give me the opportunity to be all that I am. I've been hosting the podcast, serving multifaceted and multi-gifted women. I've been serving as a mentor to my prophetic arrows community. I've been training, developing, and helping to certify life coaches with Called Women Institute. I've had speaking engagements. I've been ministering, leading a discipleship hub with my husband, business owner, wife, mother, all the different things, right? I feel like this year I've done a lot of purpose work. This year has been truly a year where I can say I have done a ton of purpose work. And it's because I felt it was okay finally to be all of me. And I didn't feel like I had to suppress or change or minimize any parts of me to be successful or to feel fulfilled. I was just all of me this year. And so I want to encourage you with that as well, going into 2025. You are not one dimensional. You can be all that God created you to be, and you can do it all well, right? You can do it all well. And so whatever that is for you, take that back to the Lord, process through it for yourself, but you can be all of who you are. Now, the final lesson number 5, this was a really good one too. And I think that this is going to really bring some things into perspective for you as you go into this next year. Lesson number 5 is the very thing you've been running from will probably be the most impactful thing you will do. Now, I ran for a very long time. Let me tell you, a very long time from leading with who I am as a prophet in this online space. I was comfortable with being Raven the counselor. Many of you probably came into the introduction of who I am by some of the content that I was sharing as a counselor. I was comfortable with being Raven the coach. You may have met me at that point of my journey where I really focused on being the inner work specialist and coaching individuals through mindset and all those different things. I was not comfortable with being Raven the prophet online. Okay. I've served in church, all those different things. I know and have known that I'm a prophet. I'm an ordained prophet. That has been clear to me. But as far as leading with that in an online space was difficult for me. I did not want to lead in that capacity. I wanted to be the professional. I wanted to lead as a counselor. I wanted to lead as a coach. I wanted to be the professional Raven in that sense with my career and different things of that nature. And this is the first year that I have led with who I am as a prophet online. And this is the first year that I've really talked about it. This is the first year I've really been open with it in the capacity that I have been. And it has been the most impactful, effortless year for me. I can honestly say that with me leading in this capacity and being okay with that and resolving and giving God a yes, it has been the most impactful, effortless year for me because I am leading from who I am. The thing about that is I was not born a counselor. I was not born a coach. I was born a prophet. And honestly, there is just so much online right now pertaining to the prophetic and pertaining to prophets that I just didn't want to be tied to any of that. But I had to yield and give God a yes to doing what he told me to do and being all that I am. So this year has really been the most impactful for me because of my willingness to come into alignment with my innate nature and who I am. And so I want to challenge you to face the thing that you have been avoiding. Because I avoided that thing like left and right. Okay. I was like, okay, God, I can reason with you. Let's do something else. What about this? What if I give you a little bit of it? And God was like, girl, if you don't listen, you know how we try to reason with God, but God is going to have the final say. It's no reason. Just yield, just yield to him. So I want to challenge you again to face the thing that you have been avoiding. Okay. The thing that you have been saying, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. But God has been saying, hey, I want you to do this. I want you to pursue this. I want you to go forward in this. Whatever that thing is for you, I want to challenge you to face that thing that you've been avoiding and be courageous enough to give God a yes. Okay. Because what you don't know is the thing that you fear the most may actually be your greatest breakthrough. Okay. The thing that you fear the most may actually be your greatest breakthrough. Well, this has been a joy. I want to thank you for rocking with me on today. This wraps up our final episode of 2024. I hope that you will take these lessons for yourself and apply them to your own life. I'm sure there are more things and more lessons that you have learned throughout your journey this year and has been a great impact on your life. And so whatever those things are, make sure you process through them, make sure you reflect through them, make sure you take time to write, to journal, to process with the Lord, to pray through them before you go into 2025. But I must say that I am very excited about what 2025 has to offer. And I hope that you are excited as well. So I hope that you've gained lots from the podcast this year. I hope that you've been able to feel equipped. I hope that you have been able to gain wisdom. I hope that you have been challenged. I hope you have been stretched from the podcast episodes from 2024. And I truly hope that they have blessed you in a mighty way and that you are going into 2025 ready to go and ready to thrive with God at the center of all that you do. Thank you for spending this year with me and for letting me be a part of your journey. I would love to hear just some feedback from you and how you enjoyed the podcast this year and just the takeaways that you have right in the comment section for me. So take a couple minutes and light up the comment section for me so I can go back and read every comment and respond to every comment, because that would just be a joy for me. Until next time, I'll see y'all in January.